Willkommen. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sean Huggins and this is React with Hugs. Today's episode, we have a interesting looking video. Check this out. The Nazi weather station in North America? Huh? What the heck is going on here? Nazi weather station in North America? How is this even possible? I don't understand. But we're going to understand together. That's the purpose of this channel. So let's waste no time. Let's hop straight into it. Los geht's.
Was made possible by CuriosityStream. Get an entire yearly subscription for only $11.99 right now with their special holiday deal at curiositystream.com/HAI.
Nice.
World War II. Of all the world wars, it's definitely in the top 3. While World War II had a lot of fighting, there was very little seen in North America apart from one Pearl Harbor-sized exception. In fact, the lack of a German invasion in North America is one of the first facts I learned about World War II in school, along other basics. Nazis bad, America good, Russia good but then later bad, Churchill drunk but still good, etc., etc. So you can imagine my surprise at discovering, when I delved into the topic mines for a fresh new clickbaity title, that in fact, the Germans did invade North America once in 1943 for 28 hours in a mission that was then forgotten about for over 30 years. It was all centered around weather.
Okay, this is a very good clickbait title. This is awesome already.
You know, the app on your phone that says whether you should wear a jacket today. Back in World War II, cell service wasn't good enough for smartphone-based applications, so if you wanted to know what the weather was going to be, you needed to have your own weather predicting apparatus. And that was where the Germans had a problem. You see, weather systems in the Northern Hemisphere generally move from west to east for a lot of complicated reasons I don't have time to get into. Something Coriolis effect. I don't understand the link between Toyota's best-selling line of subcompact and compact cars and weather patterns either, but that's what Google's for. The point is,
dude, this guy's puns are hilarious.
If you want to know what the weather will be like in the Atlantic Ocean and Europe in a few days, you have to know what's happening in North America now. It's like how if you want to know what memes will be trending on Instagram tomorrow, you should look at Reddit today. The Allies, because they controlled North America and most of the land around it, had plenty of weather stations in North America.
So they could get all of their weather forecasting, and then since all the actual fighting was going on over here, they kind of had a lot better predictions as to what the weather will be in a few days in Europe. Oh, that's actually a very significant advantage to have.
Iceland and Greenland, which meant they could predict what the weather would be like in Europe before the Germans could. In the early stages of the war, the Germans got North American weather reports from secret Arctic stations, weather ships, weather aircraft, and U-boats with weather instrumentation, but at this stage, their North American weather stations were easily captured by the Allies because, you know, they were on Allied land and weather stations can't run very fast. The ships were also captured, and the aircraft were very limited in what they could collect because
this looks like an old school drone or something. Oh wait, it's a whole plane. Oh wow, so they're flying around with like antennas on the front of the plane. Wow, fascinating.
Every time they flew into the West Atlantic, they risked being shot down. Also, in order for the U-boats to transmit weather data, they would have to break radio silence, thus allowing them to be tracked, which really undermined the whole not getting found part of being a U-boat. But the Nazis really needed accurate weather data because accurate weather prediction is a super important step in creating a pan-German racial state. Tides affect where ships can land, storms affect where ships and aircraft can safely travel, fog, rain, and clouds affect visibility, temperature affects what equipment and clothing troops need, and so on. In fact, D-Day was largely contingent on it being a day with low tide, minimal cloud cover, light winds, and low seas, which would allow the Allied troops to see, avoid, and disarm the sea mines off the coast of Normandy. So the Germans designed a secret weather station called the Wetter von Grönland. While Secret Nazi Weather Station sounds like the plot of a direct-to-video History Channel movie, this was actually totally real. These secret Nazi weather stations were then deployed in several key locations. 14 were put in Arctic and subarctic areas, 5 were placed around the Barents Sea, and 2 were intended for North America. However, only one of those 2 made it, as the submarine carrying the other was sunk by a British air attack. Which, you know, good. It was a Nazi submarine, and sinking Nazi submarines is what you're supposed to do. The other station traveled in a U-boat, the U-537, which left for North America from Kiel, Germany. In order to keep it secret, the station was nicknamed Kurt, which is kind of a weird choice.
Okay.
Codenames are usually something much cooler. Like, imagine instead of being called the Manhattan Project, it was just called Steve. It doesn't have the same ring to it. Anyways, the U-boat, carrying Kurt, was badly damaged on its journey by a storm. After all, they didn't know the weather yet, but despite a crack in its hull and the loss of its anti-aircraft cannons, the U-537 made land on October 22nd, 1943 at Martin Bay in northern Labrador.
Dude, that would be, oh my gosh, being in an U-boat in the middle of the frickin' Atlantic Ocean for, days, weeks, months, who knows how long it took them to actually make the crossing, and then being in such a bad storm that you crack your hull? What? You crack your hull? A warship that is designed to, survive battle hits a storm so bad it cracks the hull and loses its cannons? Like, dude, that would be so terrifying just to be on that thing in the middle of a storm. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
And while some of the crew stayed back to repair the sub, the rest got to work installing Kurt. Once they were done, they camouflaged it with empty American cigarette packages, and because labeling it Secret Nazi Weather Station would have raised some eyebrows, they labeled it as part of the Canadian Meteor Service, which doesn't exist.
Okay, well, you know what? Honestly, even though Canadian Meteor Service doesn't exist, it's not the absolute worst idea. It's actually not a bad idea, because I feel like most people that would come by something like this in the middle of nowhere and they see Canadian Meteor Service on it, they're like, oh, this belongs to the Canadian Meteor Service, something that I don't know anything about and I didn't know existed, but I don't care. I don't care that it's here because it's not mine. I'm just going to leave it.
28
that's what I would
hours
do,
after
at least.
arriving, they left. While the station was expected to work for 6 months, for unknown reasons, it stopped transmitting after 1, which again, is good. Nazis are bad. Perhaps the strangest element of this story, though, is the entire thing was forgotten for over 30 years.
Wow.
Until 1977, Weather Station Kurt just sat there, unnoticed, until a geomorphologist, basically a landscape scientist, named Peter Johnson found it while working on an unrelated project. Because it was labeled as part of the Canadian Meteor Service, he didn't think much of it, but later, a retired engineer for the German engineering firm Siemens, who had originally built the station, found Johnson's notes, connected the dots, and got in touch with the Canadians, who pulled an Indiana Jones and decided that it belongs in a museum, specifically the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa, where it still sits today.
Yo, look at this thing. Dang, crazy that this thing can predict the weather. Or at least collect data on what is happening with the weather. Like, it doesn't look like anything. It looks like freaking barrels. Like, it doesn't even look like it could make any measurements of anything. Crazy.
To this day, this remains as one of the only times where Nazi soldiers made landfall in North America.
Oh man, dude, that was fascinating. Like I said, I can't even begin to imagine being on a U-boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in the middle of a giant storm. That's terrifying. But it's interesting. I never really thought about how much the weather, like being able to predict the weather, I've been taking for granted this whole time because I could just look it up on my phone. But of course, back during World War II, you couldn't have the internet. You didn't have that. And if you're not sharing that information from somebody on the ground at that site where you're trying to predict the weather from, then you don't know the weather. Like, of course, but I never even thought about that. And I never thought about how much the weather would affect the battle. Actually, very interesting. Very cool to learn about. Very fun video today. But as always, I'm curious what you guys, the experts, have to say about it. So let me know your thoughts. Leave your mustard down in the comment section below. But that's all the time that I have for today. So thank you guys so much for being here. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.